Well, good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. The left is on the attack this evening. Across the country, they're demanding that immigration law no longer apply in schools, hospitals, or churches. Meanwhile, a college student was punished by a professor for using the M word, mankind. We've got a lot on both those stories in just a minute. But first, here in Washington, Democrats continuing to pound on House Intelligence Chairman Devin Nunes, accusing him of being a stooge of the Trump administration for revealing documents that suggest the Obama administration spied on Trump and his associates. White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer blasted the press for vilifying Nunes while ignoring the substance of that story. Here's part of it.
You seem to be really focused on who showed up where and what door they went in and how it happened. To answer your question, yes, it's appropriate for a member of Congress to contact someone who has contacted him according to some of these reports. I don't know the answer to that, but if you're asking me, is it appropriate for a member of Congress to come over here? As Chairman Nunes has said himself, he wasn't hiding or roaming. He was asked to come over here by an individual. He came over, which happens daily. He was asked to go somewhere. He went there. He is cleared. And nothing that is inappropriate, and exactly the opposite. What he did, what he saw, and who he met with was 100% proper.
Well, so the question is, why is the press focused on what Nunes did and not what he apparently revealed? Well, Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney is a Democrat. He represents New York, and he joins us tonight. Congressman, thanks for coming on.
My pleasure.
So here's what I think the chairman of the Intel Committee is telling us. I want to put it on the screen for our viewers who haven't been following this. First, he says there are dozens of documents gathered by intelligence agencies run by the Obama administration with information about Trump officials. Second, the information these documents contain was not related to Russia or the investigation about Russia. Third, while many of these reports did mask the identities, redact the identities of the people in them, they were written in ways that made it clear who was being talked about, including Trump officials. In at least one instance, fourth, a Trump official other than Mr. Flynn, General Flynn, was outright identified. And these documents circulate at the highest levels of government. So to sum up, it looks like pretty clear, at least from what the chairman of the Intel Committee is telling us, the Obama administration spied on the Trump transition and campaign. Why is that not a big deal?
Well, I'd be very careful about throwing around that accusation. There's no evidence of that, and if there is, we should have it. We should have it out in the open for all to see. But it shouldn't get in the way of the very serious investigation of what the Russians were doing in our election.
No, so I'm sorry. I'm not going to let you move right on to Russia before answering the question, which is the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee said he saw this week documents collected by the Obama administration's intelligence agencies that pertain to Donald Trump and his associates. That is a big deal, is it not? Are you saying that he's lying about that those documents don't exist? How do you respond to that?
I think it's very difficult to know what Chairman Nunes is saying, and you see in the criticism of senior Republicans, most pointedly from the Senate Intelligence Committee, that's doing a good bipartisan job, the fact that most people don't really take the chairman very seriously right now. And the problem is not that he's being a partisan. The question is whether he's competent and whether he's impartial. And to get dragged down to the White House and to say so many contradictory things, it really doesn't help his credibility. Look, I was on the White House senior staff,
but he said specific things. No, I know you've been in and around government a while, but he said things that are not just of concern to Republicans, but of concern to anyone who lives in this country.
Tucker, let me be clear. If there is evidence that the Obama administration spied on the Trump campaign, let's have it. But let's also do a full investigation of what happened with the Russian investigation.
We already have
in the
evidence, don't we? And I don't think they're not mutually exclusive. Well,
no, there is no evidence.
Yes, actually there is.
No.
And General Flynn, whatever one thinks of him or his suitability to be national security advisor, we know that a conversation he had with a Russian official was recorded and then leaked illegally. He was destroyed by it.
Well,
so
I'm glad
that's a crime.
I'm very glad you mentioned that. We do know that there was an investigation going on. The FBI director has told us they're investigating collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians. And we do know that Michael Flynn was talking to the senior Russian spy in the U.S. and lied about it. That's why President Trump fired him. That's why he's under threat of criminal prosecution and seeking immunity. That's very, very different from someone spying on the campaign. That's called an investigation of Russian influence.
Right. Okay. Thanks for clarifying. So I just want to make totally clear that I understand what you're saying. You're saying it's okay for an intelligence agency to listen to an American citizen, transcribe the conversation, which is classified, and then leak it to the press
No, I didn't say that.
That's a felony. But so what are you saying?
I didn't say that.
Are you going to take a breath to at least acknowledge that's a crime and wrong, or no?
Well, you don't know that a crime has been committed, except possibly by Michael Flynn. No, let me finish. The fact is that there are legal ways for the FBI, in the course of a counterintelligence operation and investigation, to lawfully examine the communications of Americans with foreign nationals like Ambassador Kislyak. That's not spying, Tucker. That's called enforcing the law and protecting us from people who are betraying the country.
As you know, we've been through this before. You're willfully ignoring what I'm asking you, which is it okay to make that information public? And you know as well as I do that it's not. It's a crime.
No, it's not. No,
so
that's wrong.
Why just elide over that rather than just stop and say the obvious thing?
I didn't elide it. I just agreed with you.
Okay.
But it doesn't make what General Flynn was doing right. That's why Trump fired him. That's why he's facing criminal prosecution. You should care about that, too.
There are many things that General Flynn did, taking money from foreign governments, I think are not only wrong but appalling and make him unsuitable for that job. So
well, it's glad to hear you come around to that, because until recently he was the National Security Advisor.
Look, here's the point. You have intelligence agencies that are operating independent from the elected officials whose job it is to oversee them. They are refusing to turn over information to the intel committees, which, again, provide oversight over them. And you are saying nothing because it suits your partisan ends. And I'm really saying, as a member of Congress, shouldn't you be raising alarm about this?
No. You careful. I wouldn't go, just maligning our intelligence professionals. They're good people who are patriotic and protect our country.
Well, you should be careful,
and if they're asked for something, they'll turn it over. Someone leaking classified information is wrong. I agreed with you on that. Okay. I still agree with you on that.
You're not listening to members of your own party. Because, as you know, Adam Schiff, who's the ranking Democrat on the Intelligence Committee, has complained publicly that he cannot get information pertaining to the Russia investigation from the FBI. Nunes has said the same thing. You've seen Harry Reid say the same thing about the CIA. In case after case, members of Congress whose job it is to oversee these agencies can't get the relevant information.
Well,
and that's, I guess, okay with you because you're mad at Trump, but it's a problem long term, is it not?
No, of course it's not okay with me. And in fact, the FBI director did testify in front of Adam Schiff's committee in response to that request, and the agencies have been highly responsive both to the Senate and the House committee, and they should continue to be so. And anyone in those agencies leaking something that's classified as breaking the law. Now, having said that, let's get into why Michael Flynn is facing criminal prosecution and what the heck was going on between the Trump campaign and the Russians, because the FBI is investigating collusion, and it'd be great if you took that seriously, too.
Okay. I do take it seriously, and in fact, I have asked in a very specific way the ranking Democrat on the House Intel Committee to explain the question, and that is the hacking of John Podesta's Gmail account and the Democratic National Committee. And he said to me, and everyone else says, and I've heard you say many times, that was done by the Russian government, by the Putin regime. And I asked him very specifically to tell me how he knows that, and here's what he said. Watch this. Can you look right into the camera and say, I know for a fact the government of Vladimir Putin was behind the hacks of John Podesta's email?
Absolutely. The government of Vladimir Putin was behind the hacks of our institution and the dumping of information.
Of John Podesta's email.
Not only in the United States, but also in Europe.
Okay, you're not, you know what, you're dodging.
And Tucker,
no, look and say, I know they did. John Podesta's emails, they hacked those.
And I think that Ronald Reagan will be rolling over his grave at your carrying water for the Kremlin.
I'm not carrying water for the... You're a sitting member of Congress on the Intel Committee, and you can't say they hacked...
You're gonna have to move your show to RT Russian television, because
you know what?
This
That's
is perfect.
Just so beneath your office because it's so dumb and you're being duplicitous. I'm asking you, did they hack Podesta's emails? And you can't say it.
Insults like that, Tucker.
You just said I was carrying. You said I was carrying water for Putin. That's pretty hilarious.
You know, when you essentially are an apologist for the Kremlin, that's what you're doing.
I'm going to one last time, Congressman. Look into the camera and say they hacked John Podesta's emails. We know for a fact that Putin's government did that. You can't, and you know you can't, and you're hiding behind weasel words. It's a really simple question, Congressman.
Right.
Do you have evidence that Putin's government hacked John Podesta's emails? That's the core question. And instead of answering it, he called me a water carrier for the Kremlin and a tool of Vladimir Putin. He could not answer that question. I'm hardly a water carrier for Putin. That's insane. It's a straightforward question. Do you have evidence that the Russian government did that? That's the basic question. And I don't think that you do.
Well, before you start clutching your pearls, Tucker, the fact is that the FBI and our intelligence agencies say so. That's good enough for me.
Oh, it is. So when the Director of National Intelligence said to the Congress, the NSA is not scooping up email data from every American, Was that good enough for you? Because it turns out he was lying. When the head of the CIA said, no, we did not break into Senate email accounts, was that good enough for you? Because he was lying too. So maybe as a member of Congress, you should get actual facts before going out on a limb.
Tucker, you are the only person I know, including most senior Republicans on the Hill, with whom I work and have a lot of respect for, who are so skeptical of our own intelligence agencies. Our own intelligence. No, you can be skeptical, but when all of the intelligence agencies uniformly and unanimously and the FBI tell us that these actions were undertaken by Russian actors.
So don't ask any more questions at that point?
You can ask all you want.
So I'm asking you,
I'm telling you, it's good enough for me.
It's really simple. Have you seen any evidence at all?
I have been in briefings, classified and unclassified, where the conclusions of the intelligence agencies, unanimous conclusions, have been relayed to us, and they are absolutely crystal clear, Tucker, that the Russians did it. Yes, full stop.
That the Russian government, on the basis of what evidence? It's a fair question. You're calling for an independent investigation. You're describing this as collusion between the Trump people and Putin. And I'm just asking you, is there anything at the bottom of this? And you're saying, how dare you be skeptical of the intel agencies?
No, don't put words in my mouth, please. What I said is that when the entire United States intelligence community and the FBI, after months of investigation, give us a unanimous conclusion, I take it seriously, and particularly when it involves, excuse me, when it involves trying to undermine our elections, you should take it seriously too.
And I do, seriously enough to have you on the show, and I'm asking you for the third time, what is it based on? And you're instead impugning me, just as your colleagues shifted. And I'm just asking you, what is it based on? And you won't give me an answer because you don't know.
No, hold on. No, that's not true. The fact of the matter is that I can't relate to you classified information. But what I can tell you is what has been publicly reported. And if you look at what has been publicly reported, then all of the senior officials in our national intelligence community say that on the basis of their investigative methods, which include lots of things that are sensitive, but that I would prefer not to go into detail about, that is their conclusion. You can't deny that, Tucker. So this sort of notion that we should be so skeptical of our own professionals that we should not allow them to do their job is a mistake.
Of our own professionals. I must be unpatriotic. Thank you, Congressman.
No, that's fine to be skeptical, but I
apparently it's not fine with you. Thanks for joining us. Well, Bill Benny spent 30 years at the NSA actually working there. He quit finally in response to their plans to violate the privacy of U.S. citizens, he says. Last week he told us it is in fact a near certainty that agency spied on the Trump campaign. We presented his claim to Congressman Trey Gowdy earlier this week, and here's what he said.
I think that's a little broader than what my understanding is. You would have to get a warrant. If you're talking about U.S. citizen, you have to get a warrant, application, FISA court. If you're talking foreign to foreign, it's a separate analysis. If you're talking U.S. to foreign, it's still a separate analysis and one that would require going to the FISA court.
So what's the truth about all this? Bill Benny might know the answer, so we asked him to come back and explain it to us. Mr. Benny, thanks for coming on.
Well, thanks for having me be back.
So really
I just don't think, I just don't think that Representative Gowdy is aware of what the intelligence agencies are doing. He's been kept in the dark by those agencies. They're not telling him. Even Representative Nunes, who is a member of the Gang of Four and the Gang of Eight, is supposed to be exposed to everything that the intelligence community is doing, including covert programs. That's why the law says you on covert programs you only need to notify at most the Gang of Eight in Congress. But even Nunes, who is a member of the Gang of Eight and the Gang of Four also, didn't even know about the programs that were being exposed through the conversations the president was having with other members of other governments, and also the Flynn conversations and other things that he was reading about people who weren't involved in Russia at all, but were involved in the Trump campaign.
So just to be clear,
these are the things that...
Just in case our viewers don't know, the Gang of Four and the Gang of Eight are members of Congress on the committees and in leadership who get to see the highest level secret documents from the intel agencies. And you're saying even they don't know. But shouldn't they know?
Yeah,
aren't they supposed to know?
And that's a direct violation of the Intelligence Act of 1947 and 1978. They are required by those laws to notify the Congress.
So here are a couple of simple questions.
The Gang of Eight.
So the presumption that I have had, and I think most people here in Washington have had, is if one of these intelligence agencies wants to spy on an American citizen, they need a warrant. They need to go through a judge and have someone sign off on this. Is that true?
No. I mean, that's not been true since World War II. I mean, in the Nixon years, they were using programs called Minaret at NSA and COINTELPRO at FBI and Chaos at CIA. And now those same three agencies are the ones doing different programs now. Namely, the upstream programs. Representative Gowdy should be asking about the Fairview program and all the taps inside the United States. What are they doing? What are they collecting there? Well, it's not foreign data, I'll tell you that. It's domestic. And it's content and metadata. That's how the NSA analysts could do love-in, because it was local communications that were being collected and stored. It wasn't foreign to anything. This business of it's incidental bulk acquisition of data on everybody in the United States as well as the planet.
So is that so? I'm confused, and there's a lot we don't know about what Chairman Nunes has said this week about the information that he saw, the data he saw. But one of the things he said, which was fascinating, was the information on Trump and his associates was not related to the Russia investigation.
That's
Any idea what that might mean?
That's local communications internally in the United States, U.S. citizens to other U.S. citizens. So he's looking basically at political conversations and things like that.
Is there a legitimate reason for the U.S. government to be collecting that information on U.S. citizens? Or
no,
what would be
absolutely not. That's a violation of the Fourth Amendment, the Constitution. That's a violation of the Electronic Privacy, Electronic Security Acts, all those things that we're supposed to protect our privacy in the United States. We don't have it anymore. That's what I've been saying for years.
So tell us, if you can, in general terms, the mechanics of this. So I pick up a phone or I send an email through Gmail, and the federal government picks up that information how?
Basically, it's by working with the companies that run the fiber optic networks, like AT&T and Verizon and so on. They work with them by installing, like the room in the San Francisco AT&T facility that Mark Klein had exposed, where they take taps off the line. Basically, it's inserting something of the order of it's called a splitter or a Y connector. It's like a prism where you put the fiber optic line into one side of the prism, and it splits it and duplicates it going two ways. One way goes to the NSA facility, where they use NARIS devices and various other devices to take and sessionize and reconstruct everything on that line. And the rest of it goes down the proper channels for communications. So
it's pretty.
That's how they do it.
Pretty comprehensive. We just put up a map. I don't know if you could see it, of the 38 data collection centers in the United States. So really quickly, a lot of people hear this and they think, yeah, but there are a lot of terror threats, and that's the purpose of this surveillance, is to stop those. Is it, to your knowledge, used for other reasons other than stopping terrorism?
Of course it is. Yeah.
Such as?
Yes, well, I mean, it's used for internal police by the Drug Enforcement Administration, by the FBI, and they use that to go after common crime inside the United States. And then they have to do a parallel construction to substitute and discover data that would implicate them in a crime, and therefore use that as a method, as the reason why they arrested it, substituted for the NSA data in a court of law to try them. And that's simply a destruction of our entire judicial process.
Yeah, well, it would certainly seem to be. Mr. Binney, thanks a lot for coming back. You're an informed voice on this.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it.
Yep.
Up next, one columnist says that instead of obsessing over bathrooms, transgender Americans ought to consider the existential threat posed by radical Islam. He joins us next. Also, the left is calling for ICE to be barred from making immigration arrests in schools, hospitals, even churches. Up next, we'll talk to an attorney who says limiting the reach of U.S. law is a good idea. Stay tuned. Christopher Barron is a gay conservative. He just published a piece over at the Hill newspaper saying the real threat to gays in this country isn't President Trump, it's radical Islam. Here's part of what he wrote. While the faux battle over bathrooms rages on, a real war in the lives of LGBT people is being waged by Islamic extremists who have pledged the global elimination of LGBT people. Just this week, ISIS released photos of extremists in the Iraqi city of Mosul throwing a gay man to his death from the top of a building in the city. Chris Barron joins us tonight on set. Chris, thanks for coming on.
Absolutely.
What I find so strange, I understand why interest groups, divide the world into people who are for us and against us. That's fine, and it makes sense to me. But why would groups that claim to advocate for the interests of gay Americans also advocate for the admission of immigrants who hate gays?
It absolutely makes no sense whatsoever. None whatsoever. I mean, look, we've had a conversation over the last couple of decades about evolving, opinions, about evangelical Christians' opinions about LGBT people. And there's been a lot of legitimate criticism. And I think we've seen a lot of changing of hearts and minds. Meanwhile, the left has completely and totally ignored the fact that Islam has a serious problem with gay people. We're not just talking about, won't let people use the bathrooms that they identify with. We're talking about
not baking a cake for the wedding. This
is what we're throwing gay people off of buildings, killing them. You look at the countries in the Middle East and their positions on LGBT people. It's illegal to be gay in Iran. The penalty for being gay in Iran is death. This isn't just we don't like you. We're talking about state-sanctioned murder of someone just for being gay, and the left turns a blind eye to it every single day.
But so immigration plays a huge role in this. If you look at who supports Marine Le Pen in France, often decried as a fascist or whatever, anti-immigration person here, and she may not be a perfect person. She has a lot of gay support, though, in France, for the obvious reason, because she is opposed to making France more Islamic, and gay people in France see that as a threat to them, and why wouldn't they?
Absolutely. Look, we did an LGBT for Trump event in Cleveland at the RNC, and Geert Wilders came and spoke. And he spoke eloquently about the need to protect gay people from radical Islam. And Marine Le Pen has done the exact same thing. And by the way, Donald Trump did it during the campaign. Donald Trump went out and said, I will protect gay people from the spread of radical Islam. Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation was shoveling tens of millions of dollars in from repressive regimes like Saudi Arabia.
I never understood that. How do you get a pass from Human Rights Campaign if you're taking money from the Saudis? I also never really understood why the Orlando nightclub shooting, which killed a ton of gay people, a Muslim guy, extremist did, I never heard anything about it from that angle here in Washington from the organized gay groups. I don't understand why.
Well, again, because they put politics over policy. They really have become, the Human Rights Campaign is a de facto, LGBT wing of the Democratic Party. And that's fine. If that's what they want to do, that's fine. Right. They should admit that that's what they're interested in. They're interested in partisan politics, not actually protecting the lives of LGBT people. I mean, look, after what happened in Orlando, Donald Trump came out and gave an impassioned plea for gay votes and said, look, I'm not going to let this happen on my watch. And did the Human Rights Campaign say, look, we got our disagreements, but we applaud, candidate Trump for this? No, they attacked him for it. They attacked him for coming out and saying that. It made no sense whatsoever and is nothing but pure, plain politics.
And long term, it can't work for the Democratic Party. You can't seek to appeal to two groups who are at basic odds with each other.
Look, the gay left is making a suicide pact with the Democratic Party right now. If they think that the future is that we need to have, radical Islamic extremists coming to this country as long as they want, let me tell you what, that ain't going to end well.
No, it's not. It's just so obvious, and nobody ever says it, and thank you for saying it.
Absolutely.
Chris Barron, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Up next, should we cripple immigration enforcement even further than we have? Our next guest says ICE should not be allowed to do immigration raids in schools, hospitals, or churches. He'll tell us why after the break. Under a guideline implemented in 2011 during the Obama administration, ICE avoids going into what they call sensitive locations. Those would include schools, hospitals, and churches when they make immigration raids. But last month, they apparently violated that policy, arresting an illegal immigrant who was camping outside his church. The move infuriated many on the left, which vilified ICE for doing its job. Joshua Galper is a lawyer and Democratic Party strategist who supports creating what he calls immigration safe zones, and he joins us now. Mr. Galper, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me tonight.
So there are a lot of questions about this policy, this safe zone policy, but the obvious one to me as a parent and a taxpayer is making a school or a hospital into a safe zone for illegal aliens going to make schools and hospitals better?
Well, it's not about making schools and hospitals better. It's about providing the really important social service institutions that are the fabric of our community. So it's really about what we're doing to support people who are undocumented or citizens here in this country. Without hospitals, without these sorts of social service organizations, there'd be a lot more cost put on the taxpayer, right? And you also have to look at sort of how this links up with the bigger issue, which I think this is coming from, in sanctuary cities, which I'm sure we'll get to.
First of all, let me just, my jaw's open, and I applaud you for admitting that it's not about making schools and hospitals better. So if you have kids in a public school and it becomes 25% non-English speaking illegal alien, and a lot have, or if you're going to your local emergency room and it's filled with people without health insurance who can't speak English, it doesn't improve the institution or the experience for you. obviously, and so I'm just glad that you conceded that. But would you also concede that
I'm not quite conceding that, Tucker. What I'm saying is that it improves the social fabric of our communities, and of course it improves those institutions by having more diversity in these places. But the really important thing is that we need
a school gets better when it gets like a massive influx of non-English speaking illegal aliens?
Well, we're not talking about education. We're talking about whether or not ICE should be following the 2011 directive.
But schools are
and whether
designed
there's
to
a new
provide it.
policy
I mean, the point of a school
now
is not to help people who've snuck into our country illegally, but to educate our children, right?
Well, it's to educate everybody who can go to that school. I mean, that is the idea. But the larger point here is whether or not you're going to have big roundups of people who are undocumented, who committed no crime, who are in this country because they want a better life. In some cases, some people are seeking asylum in this country. And the whole idea is to make sure that you don't have this destruction of the social fabric. When you look at,
well,
for instance,
it's bad for them for sure. I mean, I wouldn't, if I'd snuck into someone else's country illegally and I were enjoying free schools and medical care and maybe housing and subsidized food, I wouldn't want anyone to hassle me at all. And I totally agree. They must be against it.
Let's talk about the people who should be hassled, though, right?
Who sends his kids to public school, why should I be in favor of this exactly?
Look, we're talking about when ICE is going after folks, according to DHS in the Obama administration at least,
right.
We were talking about 13% of undocumented immigrants were people who were being targeted, people who were committing crimes, had other issues on their record where they were being targeted for deportation. 87% of undocumented immigrants have done nothing in this country in terms of committing a crime and putting themselves on a list where they should be getting deported. That's what the Obama administration did. Now we've got a situation where we've completely widened that scope through this executive order, and you're suggesting, I think, that these agents should be going to schools and to hospitals and churches to round up people who are scared to death that they're going to be.
I bet they are. I bet they are scared.
And I bet a lot of them are wearing ankle bracelets.
And I bet a lot of them are good people too. My only point is that there is another interest here, and that's the interest that I would have as an American citizen in having decent schools. And schools have been totally destroyed by unfettered immigration, as you know. In the state I grew up in, California, it's like wrecked the school system. It really is a drain on hospitals, as you know. And my only point is, don't I get a say in this too? Or is it just about what's good for the illegal aliens?
I would disagree with that being the primary reason for wreckage of the school system.
Are you serious? In California?
Well, I went to school in California. I did not go to school in California.
I think there's wide consensus, yes, that immigration has not been great for California schools.
I think the issue is whether or not these places should be safe zones for people, and whether or not the 2011 directive was reasonable.
Okay, so but
you're not talking about kids who committed a crime. You're talking about people who are undocumented, and you're saying that is.
Well, some do commit crimes, but look, their presence here is a crime. And so my question is, why are we and I'm not saying they're bad people, but I don't think people who cheat on their taxes are necessarily bad people. I don't think people who don't register their guns are necessarily bad people. And so my question is, why are we limiting this to immigration crimes? Why couldn't a church be a safe haven, or a hospital or a school be a safe haven for people who violate federal gun law? Are you for that too? Look, and if not, why not?
I think that's a completely different set of issues.
Why is this only for immigration laws?
Because it's about immigration laws. So that's what we're talking about here.
I want to talk about gun laws. I think some of them are silly, and I don't think people who violate them are necessarily bad. I've got a gun. I've hurt anyone with it, but I didn't register it. So why shouldn't I be able to have safe haven in my kid's school? I'm serious.
If what you're suggesting is that somebody has a gun in a school and is not being arrested and held to the same.
No, I don't necessarily have the gun on me, but let's say the Fed's looking for me because I didn't register my gun, and I go into a school because I don't want to hurt the fabric of the community. No, shouldn't I be immune from enforcement within the school?
I would concede that the person with the gun should of course be put in jail, but or taken away, arrested.
So what you're saying is you get to decide which crimes should be enforced, which laws should be enforced, and which shouldn't be.
I think a firearm that is loaded is a much different situation.
I don't have a gun with me.
Committed no crime.
I didn't pay my taxes, didn't pay my federal taxes, but I go to a school or a hospital, and why wouldn't that be a safe zone? Wouldn't it hurt the fabric of the community if they arrested me? I've got kids, man. If I go to jail, it's going to hurt my kids.
Isn't the bigger issue here that the federal government is trying to impose on local communities what they should and should not be doing about their own law enforcement? No, the issue is that some people think that some federal laws can be ignored and others can't. And my question is, how can we tell what should be obeyed and what shouldn't be? Well, I think we need to start with what the substance of the issue is. And I think when you're talking about immigration and people who are undocumented, there has been a decision by the prior administration, and I think it's one that was not necessarily disagreed with by the entire population, that they would not invade these places to take these people out.
I wish they'd do the same for tax law, because I pay too much in taxes and it bothers me. I can get in trouble for it.
That's a completely different issue. That is a completely different issue.
Why don't you and I get together? We're out of time. We can start a coalition. Ignore federal tax law. Will you join me in that?
Maybe a coalition for federalism. I'll join you in that.
Joshua Galvin, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Up next, we'll talk to a college student who said she lost points on a paper for saying a naughty word. What was that naughty word? We'll tell you. It'll blow your mind. Well, it's pretty hard to find actual offensive conduct on university campuses these days, but that doesn't stop professors from hallucinating it. Caitlin Jeffers is an English major at Northern Arizona University. On a recent paper, she had a point deducted from her score because she used the word, brace yourselves now, mankind to describe humanity. Her professor, Ann Scott, warned her that this was inappropriate gendered language, contrary to how the word has been used by almost everybody for centuries. Scott said mankind referred only to men and was therefore sexist. Caitlin Jeffers joins us now. Caitlin, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So it doesn't sound like this is a debate over accuracy. Mankind is a real word, and you used it correctly. It sounds like it's a debate over preference. She didn't like the way you used it. She didn't like your ideas, and so she penalized you. Is that what happened?
Yes, exactly. I turned in a paper. I had used the word mankind, and apparently that wasn't to her liking. Apparently that's sexist and not gender-neutral language, and I should be punished for that.
What I find so striking is that she's an English teacher, so of course language is her subject of study, and accuracy has got to be a concern for anyone who's teaching kids. Did she say it wasn't accurate?
Yes, she told me that the word mankind only refers to men. It doesn't actually include all of humanity.
Does the dictionary say that, or is there some authority that she pointed to confirm that position?
Well, she referred to the Modern Language Association, or MLA, and apparently they're enforcing this kind of gender-neutral language.
Huh. And so you got a point off. Did you say, you know, I'm contesting this? I don't think you should take a point off. I mean, how did you respond to her?
Well, I met with her after I saw that she had marked me off, and I had a discussion with her, very civil, but she told me that using the word mankind was sexist and against women. It apparently has a history of holding women down in some fashion.
Huh. Interesting. So I think we've got a full screen here of her note to you. We put it up here. I would be negligent, she said, if I did not also raise this issue of gendered language and ask my students to respect the need for general neutral language. Professor Ann Scott. So her position is this is oppressing people. This is a tool of sexism. This is a theoretical, but I'm wondering what you think of it. If you had a student in your class wearing a burqa who was told by her family that she could not reveal her hair in the presence of men, do you think Professor Scott would consider that sexist or would say anything about it?
She wouldn't say a thing about it.
Does that seem sexist to you, telling a girl she's not allowed to reveal her hair to any man? Does that seem more sexist than the term mankind?
Absolutely. I have no idea why, you know, feminists are obsessing over tiny little, you know, microaggressions, such as how, you know, or issues like how the word mankind is used when there are women living under Sharia law who are actually oppressed by an actual patriarchy.
That they're defending. Yeah, there are quite a few macroaggressions in this world right now. It might be worth paying attention to those. Caitlin, thanks a lot for coming on. Good to see you.
Yes, thank you for having me.